Here we are back to Gary Paulson's Tucket's Gold. We're at chapter 5 and probably chapter 6. We'll see how this goes. Francis walked well ahead. He did this partly because the other two had shorter legs and were carrying the dried meat and leftover hide, and partly because he could not stop worrying. Some fears were about the comancheros, but he worried more about water. They were walking up the stream bed and had found puddles here and there, but they were drying up fast, and he did not like the prospect of making a dry camp or of going more than one day without water. Every now and then he would leave the stream bed and move up along the higher banks or go well off to the side and stand on a hill, careful not to kick up dust for anybody to see. But there was nothing but a wide, half-desert prairie that seemed to stretch endlessly. He could stand, the rifle cradle in his arm and his eyes moving slowly. Or he would stand, the rifle cradle in his arms and his eyes moving slowly. Waiting, he studied, and he found birds and rabbits and deer, but nothing human. Toward evening he roamed wide, moving out carefully half a mile on each side of the stream bed, looking for tracks or some sign of movement. Nothing. He came back into the stream bed and walked another 100 yards, looking for just the right place, and at length he found a ledge slightly above the bed with an overhang to catch the light and heat from the fire. In front there was a small pool of water, left either by the rain or, more likely, by a seeping spring. He tasted it. Ah, it was sweet. Gather wood, he told the children when they came up, and dry grass for kindling and for beds. I'm going to look for fresh meat. Francis, Lottie began, we know how to make camp. You don't need to tell us. He nodded and moved off. Francis checked the cap on the nipple of his rifle, pushed it down tightly with his thumb, and moved up the bed of the stream. He had seen many tracks of deer and smaller game. It was time to hunt, even though they had enough skimpy meat to keep them going for 2 more days, and Francis could go days more without eating. He also hated to stop this close to where they'd left the comancheros, but he had to hunt now in case they came into a country with no game. Cover was thinning, and he had to think of 3 mouths and 3 stomachs instead of just his own. Lottie and Billy couldn't cope with hunger as well as he could. It would be wrong to say he hunted. He walked up the stream bed, past 2 does and an older buck, waited until he saw a young buck, aimed and fired. The deer dropped. It was strange, almost like the deer had never been hunted with a gun. They moved off away from him, but slowly and only for a few yards, and then they stood and looked at him. He dragged the deer back to where the children had gathered wood and grass. It was nearly dark, and Billy was chewing on a piece of half-dried venison. Here, Francis said, start gutting and skinning the deer, and I'll get the fire going. Do we need more meat? Lottie took the knife he handed her and stood looking at the dead deer with distaste. It seems as if we have enough meat for a couple of days, and we are on foot, Francis cut in, with bad shoes, and 2 people with short legs. If we had horses or even that mule, it would be different. We could pack food or take turns riding and cover some ground. On foot, we're going to be lucky to make 7 or 8 miles a day. I stood on a hill and could see close on to 20 miles, and believe me, there is nothing out there where we're headed. So unless we come across some horses, we need plenty of food and water now. Start cutting while I get a fire going. Billy, you make us some grass beds up on that ledge. It isn't going to rain tonight, so we don't have to worry about flooding. Dig back in a bit and watch for snakes. Francis shredded dry grass, took a double pinch of powder and put it on the flat stone next to the grass, placed a percussion cap next to it, and struck the cap with a rock. It snapped and set the powder off. The powder flushed, and the grass caught. He put more grass on it, then small twigs, and soon the ledge and the riverbank were lit with a cheery yellow glow. Francis climbed out of the stream bed and was pleased to see that neither the flames nor the glow from them showed above the cut bank more than 30 yards away. He had taken 2 steps back toward the riverbed when he heard Billy scream, "Yah!" Snake, it was all Francis could think of. Rattlers hunted at night, and they denned up during the day. Billy must have dug into a den just when one was getting ready to come out. Francis ran back to the edge of the bank and jumped into the stream bed. "Hants!" Billy yelled. "There's hants back there. I hit a cave of hants." Francis stopped next to the ledge. He looked. He couldn't see anything. Lottie was there, covered with deer blood, holding the knife. There be hants. What is a hant? Ghost, said Lottie said. He saw a ghost. That's what they call ghosts back home. Francis peered over the ledge, under the ledge. In there, in the dirt? Look for yourself, Billy said. I ain't going back in there. Francis peered back beneath the ledge of a slab of limestone. Over countless years, the water had cut back beneath it, making a small roofed area, perhaps 3 feet deep. It could not, by any stretch of the imagination, be called a cave, not even a hole. But just above the recess, the recent rain and flooding had cut the earth away, and when Billy had started to work back to make a bed, the loosened earth above the ledge had given way, and a clump had fallen out. There, in that clump of earth, shining in the firelight as if suddenly come to life, was a complete human skull. Francis jerked back. Then his common sense took over. It's nothing, he said, just a skull, probably some old grave. It's a hant. Billy stared wide-eyed at the skull. It's full of of evil luck. Only for the man who was the skull, who was the skull, Francis said. It looks like his luck ran out. You can see the hole in his head. He turned the skull slightly with a finger and pointed to a small triangular hole in the forehead. It looks like a lance hit him, or some kind of sharp club or hammer. What's that? Lottie had come closer and pointed. What? Up there in the dirt, it looks like a piece of steel or something. Francis put more wood on the fire, and in the brighter light, he poked back carefully into the dirt the skull had fallen from. He found a metal edge and pulled at it. At first, it wouldn't move, and then suddenly it came, pulling dirt and what seemed to be the rest of the skeleton along with it. Francis found himself holding, he blinked, a steel helmet. It was rusted and tarnished and somehow looked familiar, though at first he could not tell why. It was round with a steel brim that came to a point in the front and back and had a steel edge down the middle of the spine. It's Spanish, Lottie said. I remember Paul talking about how the Spanish came to this country before the settlers landed back east, and the Spanish had cities and everything out here. He had a book with pictures, and I remember a picture of some of the men wearing hats like this. He was smart, Paul was. Her voice became sad. I miss him something fierce sometimes. Francis nodded, and they were silent a moment. He looked down at the helmet. I remember, too. My parents had a book in the wagon, and the pictures showed the Spanish had swords and battle axes, but no guns. He shuddered. I wouldn't want to be alone in this country without a gun. There's more. Billy had gotten over his fear and pointed back into the cave, the cavity left by the falling skeleton. More metal. See, it shine. This time he was wrong. Francis reached once more into the hole and tugged at a corner of metal. He pulled out a bar that he took to be lead. Then he dug his fingernails into it and tried to, and knew. Oh no, this wasn't lead. He took the knife from Lottie, for once speechless, and he scraped a corner with the blade. The metal shone brightly in the firelight. It's silver, he said softly. A whole bar of silver. There's more, Billy said, reaching back into the hole. A whole lot more. He pulled at a metal band, and a rotten wooden container fell into the ground, bars scattering around Francis' feet. Not all of them were silver. He caught the sheen of yellow through the dirt and picked one up. Gold? He almost whispered it. Oh, I think we'll stop there. That was chapter 5. Boy, this is exciting. Chapter 6. I want to read chapter 6. Let me look here real quick. Let me look. Yeah. Let's wait till tomorrow. Okay? So we'll be back tomorrow. Bye.